My name is Moy. I have the absolute privilege of being your host today at Ask a Professional at the BBPA. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, we host conversations just like the one we're going to have. We speak with industry professionals so that you can take your businesses and your lives to the next level. I can't see the chat right now, but I'd love for you to share with me where you're joining from. Are you new to the space? Let me know. Let me know. We do have a very special guest. Her name is Keachea Dixon. She is a business lawyer. She'll be joining me momentarily as we speak on advancing racial equity. We're going to be exploring the 50-30 challenge. And today we'll have a great discussion around the 50-30 challenge. So please get your pens and pads ready for questions, and Keachea will be here to answer all of them, okay? Or what she can't answer, I'm sure she'll look into and get back to you. Once again, my name is Moy. Let me see if I can check out the chat before I introduce Keachea. Where are you joining from? Are you from the GTA, Toronto? Tell me where you're joining from. Please also, before we get started, I'd love for you to share this link. Sharing is always caring. Hello, Charlie from Ottawa, Mama C from Winnipeg. I see you. I see you. Thank you once again for joining. So the 50-30 challenge, once again, we'll be exploring that, and Keachea will be our special guest today. Keachea Dixon is an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of New York, the province of Ontario, and the island of Jamaica. Ms. Dixon's practice focuses on commercial, cannabis, entertainment, real estate, wills and estate, intellectual property, and technology law. She is a co-founder and the VP of International Business Affairs for Cannabisiac, a global member-based company helping businesses and professionals tap into growing local cannabis industry through the provision of education, training, network, events, mentorship, and advocacy. Keachea, if you can join me on the virtual stage, and please, the weather is sort of warming up where I'm at. I'm in the Niagara region, and the sun is coming out just a little bit. It's a bit overcast today, but please share some sunshine with us through the chat. Share some comments. Let me see if I can check out the chat here. Keachea, are you here with us on the virtual stage? Okay, good.
I am.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Bernadette, we see you. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. So you'll be sharing with us a little bit about the 50-30 challenge. But before you do that, Keachea, how are you doing? I love to ask my guests how they're doing. Want to make sure that you're feeling all right. How are you?
I am well, not as sunny as you, but we are okay here. I'm in Mississauga, Oakville area, right at the border, and it's not that sunny where I am at the moment, but the weather is still good. So I am well.
Yes. Well, I mean, it is overcast where I'm at. So I'm in Niagara region. So I think it's overcast pretty much all across the board, right? But glad to know that you're doing well and the weather is warming up, I hear, or I see, I feel. And I hope it will remain consistent. So thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you can just share a little bit more before you get into the 50-30 challenge. Keachea, just share a little bit more about the work that you do. And we'd be more than happy to get started and whatever you'd like to share about the 50-30 challenge. I certainly would love to know more. I don't believe I know a whole lot about it. So I'd love to glean from your insight this afternoon.
Okay, so as you said, I'm a business lawyer. I am also licensed in Jamaica, New York, and here, but my passion is intellectual property, which I don't get to do that much of. So I love to help creatives as well as business owners protect their intellectual property rights. I have a master's in that area. So between law, which is my love, I loved the area of law since the age of 10, just trying to protect people, advocate for people in whatever space I'm given, and to educate them as well. So when I do my work, it's not just about getting what you want done, but it's having a holistic approach as to where you want to go and educating you along the process.
Absolutely, that's good. Holistic is always the best way to go, right? You want to make sure that all the parts are working together for a greater good. So I do thank you for the work that you're doing. And I know you have a presentation, is that correct? as you?
Yes, there's a presentation that we used before that gives some information. There's a lot. I'll probably just skip through a few parts so that we can hopefully get to a more interactive, it might be via chat, but a more interactive dialogue today as it relates to this area.
Absolutely. Well, that's the best. I love interaction. I love dialogue. So this is the best way to go. So without further ado, go ahead and share your presentation, and then we'll come back on the virtual stage and we'll answer any questions that the audience members might have. Okay.
Okay, so I'll just repeat again that this is a presentation. It's not created by me. It's created by BBPA and other partners to ensure that we in the community, as well as the organizations, are aware of the 50-30 challenge and why it's important to us, and in making sure that we play our part in advancing it over the next few years. So the 50-30 challenge is really about getting 50% diversity and 30% in representation of underrepresented people. So the 50% is gender diversity, right? And I don't know why my slide is not going forward.
Take your
Give me
time.
a second here.
Yes, we'll bear with you. No worries. I just want to say a special shout out while you're doing that, Keachea. Special shout out. I think I saw her enter the room. Our new CEO. Shout out to you. I think you're still here. I can't see the chat right now, but welcome. Glad to have you. Yes, the recording will be made available on the BBPA YouTube channel. So feel free to check out the recording there, Ingrid. Thank you so much for asking that. I like the recordings. It's good to have that reference to go back to, but there's nothing like these live sessions, so please do be encouraged to join us on these live sessions. You're absolutely welcome, Ingrid. And invite your friends and colleagues as well. We've been sharing some great insight over the last, for as long as BBPA has been around, but from a virtual standpoint, we've been sharing some incredible content. Don't miss out. Don't miss out. And you can go ahead, Keachea.
Okay, thank you. This is the only issue with the live. We can't control what happens or delete it. So, so it covers, the government of Canada is doing this Canada-wide in terms of supporting and promoting diversity and inclusion on boards, right? The Diversity Institute at Ted Rogers School of Management, College and Institute of Canada, as well as the Women's Economic Council, Global Compact Network Canada are leading this work. As a partner of the Diversity Institute, meaning the BBPA, they're working to promote awareness of the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion on boards and in leadership roles, and also providing support to organizations with their strategies to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion. So everyone knows about the employment and skill gaps, underrepresentation of women in STEM, devaluation of foreign credentials and perceptions of skills, barriers to employment for Indigenous people, for us as well, for LGBTQ individuals, barriers to leadership, perception of the barriers, right? Occupational segregation, example, persons with disabilities are disproportionately represented in low skill or low education jobs, and often jobs at risk for being automated. So as I said, I'm just quickly going through this presentation so that you have some context for our discussion. So what is the case for equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? It broadens the talent pool and overcomes skill gaps. responds to increasingly diverse communities and gains support from diverse stakeholders. It fosters innovation, creativity, and diverse thought, mitigate legal and reputational costs, and increase staff satisfaction. So in 2020, this was the representation across Canada, right? As you see, the percentages for our community is extremely low all across Canada. In Toronto, it is 7.5%, but in Vancouver, it's 1.2%. I know we have someone here from Ottawa. It's 6%, right, of the population represented on boards. And I don't know if we have anyone here from Montreal, but in Montreal is 6.8, but London has the second lowest with 2.5%. So the women in S&P 500 companies, again, it's very low. The total employees, 44.7%. First mid-level officials, 36.9%. CEOs, 5.2%. Now, everyone knows that leadership starts from the top. If we don't have a decent representation at the top, then it won't be surprising that we don't see it throughout the organization. So one of the things that we're mandated to do is to try and get more people in higher positions that look like us, that understand our communities, so that we can be properly represented. This is by sector. Just gonna jump over this. So the basic terminologies: equality, that's treating everyone the same; equity, addressing historic disadvantage; diversity, to get representation; inclusion is ensuring that people feel valued and that they belong. So this is what we're striving for, to see more equality, equity, and inclusion. So in Canada, you know, we pride ourselves to our commitment to these values, but how are we really seeing the changes, right? We need to see more changes in the policies, in the immigration policies, in the governance, the standard practices, and in the legislation. But more than that, we have to educate the people who are actually living the daily lives in these offices as to how to accomplish it. It's one thing to put it in law, but it's another to actually transition or to take the law into the workforce and see a change. So the goals for the 50-30 challenge: gender parity, 50% women and or non-binary people, and significant representation of other equity deserving groups, 30% on our board and or in senior management. Equity deserving groups, as you see here, includes racialized Black and or people of color, persons with disabilities, the 2SLGBTQ+ and or gender and sexually diverse individuals, Aboriginal or Indigenous peoples, the Métis, First Nations, and Inuit. So these are, they have over 1,800 signatories to date. That was December 2022. Unfortunately, I don't have further updated numbers. I was looking for it, but didn't find any for 2023. I figure we should get some 2023 numbers in a few months. So the organizations include large corporations, small, mid-sized enterprises, post-secondary institutions. These are the industry leaders right now who are implementing the 50-30 challenge. As you see, a few you recognize: 3M Canada Company, Rogers Communications Inc., and Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada Inc. These are the industry associations that are a part of the 50-30 challenge. And here is information as to public available specifications as to what it should look like. So you can Google and you should find this document online. And
can we go back to that document? I
Sorry.
apologize, Keachea. The document. Okay, so
Yes,
publicly available certificate. Okay. Thank you so much.
yes. So they created a diversity assessment tool, right? Where they have the governance, leadership, strategy, human resources, processes, values, and culture, measuring the EDI diversity across the value chain and outreach and expanding the pool. So the tool goes further into specificity, such as what is leadership and governance, set targets and accountability frameworks, understand the strategic importance of diversity and inclusion, and formalize processes and recruit using a diversity and inclusion lens on the skills matrix. So basically what they're trying to show is that if you can't find individuals that are diverse, you're just not looking hard enough. So they're using these tools to help the individuals who are hiring to see a diverse individual and hire them into the pool. HR processes for defining positions, recruitment processes, and outreach. So what they did is that they just did an overall of where the issues were and tried to put in tools to correct them. Organizational culture is another one. So organizations should formalize policies such as the code of conduct, harassment policy, creating a mandatory diversity and inclusion training programs for employees, etc. I can give a quick point on organizational culture. It's very important that we're aware of this, because even as you try to do work with the city, they will ask you if you have certain policies in place, such as the disability policies, the harassment policies, the diversity and inclusion policies, even when you're starting out as a new non-for-profit, right, or charitable organization. So if there are any individuals on the platform today that's looking into that area or starting something of that nature, it's very important that you are aware of these requirements. So I think I'm gonna stop here and get more to the meat of what we want to do today. So
Thank you for that
again,
overview.
I'm not sure if I did this before. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone that took the time in their afternoon to join us to talk about this important topic. Again, it's advancing racial equity, exploring the 50-30 challenge. For those who just joined, my name is Keachea Dixon, and I'm truly honored that you are here and that I'm able to facilitate this conversation and hopefully an interactive one. We're here because we recognize that racial equity is not just a buzzword. It's something that we need to have occur and thriving in our society. It means that every individual, regardless of their racial or ethnic background, should have equal access to opportunities, resources, and success. It means dismantling systematic barriers that are persistently held back, or that have persistently held back marginalized communities. As we delve more into the topic of equity and the 50-30 challenge, I want to emphasize the importance of the initiative. The 50-30 challenge, as I said repeatedly before, represents a commitment to diversity and inclusion in leadership roles, 50% gender diversity, and 30% representation of underrepresented groups. This initiative is not just about the numbers. It's about fostering diverse perspectives, driving innovation, and dismantling the long-standing barriers that have held back too many talented individuals. And I'm sure many of us can give stories here. Throughout this workshop, we will explore the concept of racial equity, understand its significance in the Canadian society, and delve into the objectives and impact of the 50-30 challenge. We will engage or try to engage in activities discussions and brainstorming sessions aimed at generating actionable ideas that we can take back to our organization and communities. Throughout this workshop, we'll explore the concept of racial equity, understand, as I think I already said that, but our goal is not just to raise the awareness, but to inspire action. It's to challenge ourselves to think critically, to question the status quo, and to commit to making a difference. We believe that each of you who are here today brings a unique perspective and valuable insights to the conversation we're about to have. And I hope that we'll be able to actively participate and share our thoughts, and that this will be a safe space to do so. As we embark on this journey, let us remember that change begins with us being understanding, showing empathy, and action. Together, we can contribute to a more equitable and inclusive Canada, a Canada where every individual, regardless of their background, can thrive and reach their fullest potential. Thank you for your dedication to this cause, for those who are already aware, and for those who are just learning today, for being dedicated moving forward, and for your willingness to be a part of this transformative dialogue. So let's get started on this important journey. So this first portion, I wanted us to do a part on understanding racial equity. So what is racial equity? Racial equity is the fair treatment, opportunities, and advancement of individuals, regardless of their racial or ethnic background. So we're going to discuss what ways racial disparities manifest in society, including education, employment, housing, healthcare, and criminal justice. I am going to start now to use the chat because this is where we're going to become more interactive.
So let me first say thank you for the overview, Keachea. That was great. It definitely brought more clarity as it pertains to the 50-30 challenge. Freedom to know wellness. They put a question in the chat, but I think you answered that. If your question still isn't answered, Freedom, please just let us know. But thanks again for those of you who are joining us today. Today, we are speaking on the topic of the 50-30 challenge as we delve into advancing racial equity. This is why we do what we do here at the BBPA. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. Okay, so just to give a heads up for those of you who are joining us, typically the AAP sessions are for about an hour. Today is somewhat of a workshop type session, and we will be here until 1:30. If you're not able to stay for the full hour, the recording will be made available online on our YouTube channel at the BBPA, okay? Perfect, thank you so much. Glad to hear that. Freedom to know wellness. I'm not sure how to address you, but I guess that's the business name, but thank you.
Okay, so as I said, we're talking about racial equity, the systematic disparities, and creating a level playing field. So if you could just throw in the chat, like the various ways you have either observed, or if you're okay with sharing that you have experienced racial disparities. I'm sure we all have, one or two I can share in terms of seeing it in the school system, right? I have 2 children of school age, and you can see it in terms of how information is shared, how teachers show interest, or rather lack of interest, in assisting a marginalized student versus others, and also how they are given access to additional material to help them. Even further, how the guidance counselors guide them, right? So is there anyone else that can, just shout out the disparities that they see around them, and then we'll go into how you think we can be a part of seeing that change. So Moy, I'm not seeing anything as yet, but do you have anything you can share so that we keep it interactive until others throw something in?
I would say I have children too, who they've gone through the Peel district school board system. And it's similar. I mean, even if it didn't directly happen with my children, I do see it with other children, racialized children. You know, there are the biases, of course, and that's evident in the behavior, whether it means providing, you know, access to resources, like readily and willingly providing access to resources, willingly wanting to help, you know, and those things are there. Sometimes they're quite, what's the word that I'm looking for? They're nuanced for sure, but they're quite subtle as well.
Yes.
So if you're not paying attention to it, it would be easy for you to miss as well. Right?
Exactly.
So,
and it's important that you brought up that point, because it is extremely easy to miss if you're not paying attention. And unfortunately, many in our community, because of our schedules, trying to even be able to give our children what they need, the experiences, we can't show up. I'm on the board for one of the school boards, and you'd be surprised, for a school that large, only 10, 11 people show up to the meetings. So then how are we able to protect our children from these disparities when we are not showing up to make our voices heard? So that's one of the ways, if we're not necessarily in an organization to create change, right? To make that change by showing up at activities where our voices need to be heard in order for us to see change.
Perfect. Desiree says that's a huge pain point in our society that I would really like to be a part of that change. I too have a son that has gone through that in French school setting, being one of 4 Black children in the school. Thanks for sharing that, Desiree.
Yes. So Desiree, again, the way we can impact that is by showing up to these meetings, letting them know it's not okay, right? That we do need support, and also pointing out to them the 50-30 challenge, right? And seeing if there are any teachers in the school that represent individuals that are marginalized, right? Or even the trustee, you know, the trustees. So look through the system and see where it's lacking, and write in or show up when they allow us to go to the meetings, because some meetings are closed right now from the public, right? To challenge them to sign up and properly, or if they're already signed up, to move to action on the 50-30 challenge. Okay. So one of the activities we're going to do next is called the virtual privilege walk, right? Is to give us a sense of how do you feel when you're privileged versus not, and how do we see ourselves in that scenario, right? It's not about personal judgment, but about understanding the systematic advantages and disadvantages that each person feels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 statements. I'm going to make the first statement, and then we discuss that, and then the second statement. So the first statement, you can lower your hands, or rather raise your hands and then lower it after, if you resonate with it. So if you have never been discriminated against because of your race or ethnicity, raise your hand. I don't know if you can see all the screen. Let's see, people are participating.
Yes, we're all looking for the hand. So the question is, if you have never been discriminated against.
Yeah, that's right.
Raise your hand if you have never been
raise your hand.
discriminated against.
That's why you're not seeing any hands.
That's why, yes, it's 90%. We're all pretty well. I think we're all Black here or from the racialized communities. You're not going to see any hands.
Well, as I'll give a story instead, since we don't have anyone that can raise their hand. When I was in law school, so I'm gonna raise my hand for this, right? When I was in law school and I was the only Canadian Black person there, they were roughly in every year, because I studied in the US initially, in every year, there were only 2 or 3 Black students, right? So there was a difference in how I reacted to everyone in the community and how the African American students felt in the school community, right? And I have to say that I didn't feel like racialized or that, I was being discriminated against, no matter what happened, right? I always took everything as this is someone's personality. This is how, they choose to behave and, moved on. But for them, it was different, right? Everything was about a race matter, right? And I had to step back to understand that, because coming from Jamaica, where everyone looks like me, I've always seen people in power that look like me. My perspective was different, right? So though now I have a different perspective, the 20-odd-year-old Keachea, right, would have raised her hand because I didn't have the same perspective, just because I didn't grow up under that type of pressure and awareness, right, of those issues. So, and I guess I'm kind of saying this to say too that sometimes we may meet other people who we think should be marginalized or feel marginalized. We have to be empathetic to the fact that they may not see it based on their position of privilege.
That is true. That is absolutely true.
So then the next one is, if you have ever felt unsafe because of your race or ethnicity, right? Well, we never had anybody raise their hand, but lower your hand, right? So basically the exercise was to, see people move from thinking they were, then lowering down to everyone realizing that at some point they would have felt, which I just explained in my 20s versus now, some form of racial, being racialized against. And we have to take that feeling or that awareness that we have into our workplaces and communities, and not just think about our community, but the other communities at large that also go through this, right? I think we had some things going on in the chat, Moy.
Yes, I can certainly. Charlie says I can relate to that. Not sure at what point Charlie said that. But it's interesting that you made that point about going to school in the US and how you were conditioned and socialized, because that doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist. It just means that it's not necessarily your reality, right? So racism is there, but not everyone experiences it in the same way. So it's very nuanced that way, because your experience may not be my experience as well, but it's there. We can't deny that it is there, because the stats are definitely there to show it as well, right? So I appreciate that story.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I have my hand up, but I think you guys didn't see it. Because like you mentioned awareness, and I think that's a big part of it, as you mentioned, because it's and the host mentioned as well, use the word in terms of things being subtle. So sometimes racism is meted at you, but you don't, based on, as you said, your socialization and stuff like that, your level of awareness, you may not see it as that, right? And then I'm like, okay, I've never really experienced racism. But then if you really take a step back and look at it through a wider lens, you realize, oh, that was actually because I was whatever hue, right? I'll share one quick experience with you. Like, I'm also from Jamaica. Years ago, like many years ago, I went to the United States, right? And I went into a store. It was myself, my mom, my sister, and my child at the time. And we were in a store waiting to be served, to cash out. And then all of a sudden, like the cashier just wasn't cash, she just wasn't cashing us out. And I just couldn't figure that. I mean, why am I not being cashed out? Why are we not being cashed? We couldn't, it didn't dawn on us at the time what it was. And I thought, oh, maybe she's going on a break or maybe whatever. But it's like we did not even exist in her eyes. And we're like, okay, well, I guess maybe she's done working out. And so we left and we went to another station. And then right after that, we saw her cashing out somebody else, of course, of a different ethnicity. And I was like, oh, that's when it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, you're kidding me. Is this because, and because we're not used to that, right? And so what you said is really, really very poignant in terms of looking at it through different lenses, because we could say, oh, I've never been, but then you actually are being racialized, but because you're not thinking in that way, you do not see it.
Thank you for that share. And I'm going to use that to just segue again back to the point of the companies being responsible to adapt the 50-30 challenge and educate their employees and hire individuals that represent the community that they serve. Because if that store, for instance, had more employees that were Black or represent other communities or individuals in the communities that they served, you probably would not have experienced that, we would hope, right? Because one of the things with the 50-30 challenge is if you have people of different races, different choices of, the LGBTQ plus, then you have more understanding, right? And it then makes the company do better, right? Because you would adapt a company culture. If you have one set of individuals and their mindset is the same throughout, right? That's where they don't have the empathy and understanding, and including even, making sure you have individuals who have various disabilities employed as well, right? You have gone to, even though we're mandated that, you should have certain access available at stores, there's still so many places that access isn't there. And access looks in, different ways. There's access through getting into the place. Then there's also access when you're shopping in a place, or if you're on the website, people don't think about the access that individuals with disabilities need even to shop online, right? So it's a big thing. I know I said a lot, right? But I'm just trying to open your minds to the diverse issues. And as you play your part in your communities and in your organizations, you think about these challenges and how they can be addressed. Moy, I see a lot going on.
I'd like to, there certainly is a lot going on, and I do want to make mention of this point that was made in the chat here. Individual experience of racism is one thing, snap, snap. But we all experience systemic and institutional racism. I really, really appreciate that comment, because, and that's by Leanne, by the way. She's absolutely right. So we can't deny that the systemic racism is there. I think the sad part is that those individuals who has not experienced the individual racism will deny that the systemic racism is there. So I think that can be an issue. But thank you so much for that point as well. Do you mind if I just read some chat before you go to the next item on your list?
Go ahead.
Michelle says, very true regarding schooling. I'm assuming it was an American school. Yes, it was. There are certain sayings that the Black Americans know that have a racist or caste undertone. Just like in Jamaica, there are certain sayings that Jamaicans will know is negative, where Black American or Canadian may not be aware of. I also see, is Desiree still around? It says that her hand was up. I don't see her.
I'm here.
If Desiree has a question
Can
to
you-
ask, feel free to unmute your mic and go ahead and ask the question.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, no. You can hear me? Okay. So basically, I want to go back to Keachea, what you were saying about not really noticing it. I feel coming from a background, I'm Trinidadian and Canadian. So growing up in a Trinidadian household in Canada is completely different because, you know, our parents don't really know how to navigate racism. So coming from seeing racism, but not really knowing how to approach it, or knowing that it's okay to say, hey, I feel this way because of, and someone not saying, oh, she's just going to pull the race card. I think for myself, my younger self, seeing racism, but not knowing how to approach it, it kind of turned it into, like you said, is it a personality thing? So that's where my thinking started to happen up until 2020. I will be honest and say, looking back to all the years, like I used to work for one of the big five. I was a financial advisor and I was moving from one province to another. So the position that I had when I was in another province, it was a higher position. So when I moved to this other province that doesn't have a lot of Black people in it, talking to the person, the higher up on the phone, the vice president on the phone, and you know, everything was great. And then all of a sudden, when I moved in my first day there and I walked into the office and shook their hand, they were surprised that this is the same Desiree that they're speaking to on the phone because they thought it was a white woman. So just thinking back to that, in 2020, I was like, wow, there were so many lawsuits I could have had because of the way that people would treat me, but I think I would accept it because I'm like, okay, that's just their personality, or I'm reading this wrong, I'm reading too much into it because I didn't have the tool to see that it's okay to approach somebody to say, you know what, the way that you're treating me or this treatment in this environment is not acceptable. So I can see how you would have read it wrong because I have been reading it wrong and accepting it, but now that we have the tools and all the backing to say that, you know what, it's okay to approach it and understand and educate people from another race.
Desiree, if you could speak closer into the mic a little, that last portion we're not hearing.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm learning that it's okay to educate people from another race to understand that, you know, what you're doing or what you're saying is incorrect and not get the backlash that we're pulling the race card, because I feel like when people say pulling the race card, that in itself is a microaggression to let us feel like they're gaslighting us to say that we're the problem and that no, there is no problem with the way that you're thinking, because it's a personality thing. You know, they're making it seem like it's okay for us to turn it into a personality thing as opposed to a race thing.
Right. So, and again, it goes back to pushing these organizations to diversify, because as you said, when you're speaking to an audience that cannot relate at all, we're not going to see much change because they don't understand. But as we start to change what it looks like at the top, in the middle, you know, everywhere, then they would have heard more of our experiences and how we look at things, and then better be able to work with us, right? So this is the reason for the push for diversity and inclusion, so that we all can work and get along, right? Because it's not that we're gonna be, it's not pushing to say that we're going to be best friends, right? But we have to be able to work together to achieve a better goal, right? I just, as you were speaking, and I'm thinking of all of this and all the goals, and I'm reflecting on even what happened in the US recently with so many Black professional females in academia being targeted, right? And not having the support to get through their issues and to continue showing their greatness and sharing their light, right? Because they don't have someone at the same level or higher up that can relate to what they're saying, right? So this is what the challenge is about, is to change what the playing field looks like so that the people who are coming behind us don't go through what we're going through now, right? So as you said, you're in a certain position right now, so you can use that position to the best of your ability creatively to get your HR, to get your other, managers to take on this mandate of diversifying your corporation.
Absolutely. Ingrid wants to know, she says, continuing the work against racism, do you have advice, books, online resources where I could find examples about unconscious biases? I'm working on a project of theater, forum, improv to help addressing them and find solutions to it, or even testimonials about racist experiences.
So Ingrid, I don't have that right now, but if you share your information, if possible, privately with Moy and myself, then we will get it to you or connect you with someone who can help you with that.
Certainly.
Is there anything else in the chat or anything else you want to say, Moy, before I move on?
What I would like to say, just to remind our audience members, again, we're here till 1:30. If you're not able to stay for the entire session, you can watch the full recording on our BBPA YouTube channel. It's a great discussion. I love the fact that you've brought clarity around the purpose of the 50-30 challenge. I think it brings it to light for me specifically. And it really highlights how we can really play a part in ensuring that we're doing our best, right? We're doing our best to advance equity within our workplaces, within our communities. So thank you so much for this.
Okay, so I have a case study that I created like very quickly. So again, the objective is to achieve 50% gender diversity and 30% representation for underrepresented groups, including racialized individuals. So my case study is as follows. So Jamal has been hired to ABC University. He is the first head of department for criminology at the school. There are other people of color hired in different capacities, right? So what I would like to see in the chat first is, what are some of the challenges you think Jamal may face in this role? So first answer that, and then I will give the next question. Missed the question, so I'll repeat it.
Does anyone need to hear the question again? Go ahead.
So again, Jamal has been hired to this university that has existed for a very long time. He has been made department head for criminology at the school, and there are other people of color, because Jamal is of mixed ethnicity, but they're hired in other capacities. So the question is, what, if any, challenges you think Jamal would have in taking this role or having accepted this role as head of a department? in a university.
Hmm.
That's correct, Deidre, for sure. So Deidre says resistance from reportees and lack of resources. Ingrid says he could be ignored, not respected. No one listened to him. Desiree says challenges will come when he wants to make changes to their system. Biases in decision making. Okay, so the next question is, how do you think the university could address some of those challenges? So I'll repeat the challenges. So the challenges that individuals mentioned were that there would be biases on his decision making, hidden resistance from team members, individuals ignoring his comments, they're not respecting him, they're not listening to him, he has no resources. So how could the university address or make things better for Jamal once, they gave him this role, or if they could have prepared something in advance of him taking this role? Any thoughts? Okay, I'll start off and then I'm sure people will chime in. So one of the ways that the university could address the items mentioned by our participants here is actually having hired someone in a higher position than Jamal that looked like him, that could mentor him and assist him in the process in advance of him being there, right? So that's going back to trying to see people of diverse backgrounds in the higher positions. So for instance, if one of the board of directors for the university, or even the chair of a committee that oversees the school, because they fall under different schools within a university, right? So whatever the hierarchy is, if they had someone of diverse background higher up that could mentor him, he would have a support system to succeed in that role. So that's one suggestion. Ingrid says, being supportive and offer him a space he could express his frustration, his lack of support. Yes, definitely. Moy, any thoughts?
But also putting certain things in place to ensure that change can be effected, because we've had circumstances where we do have that safe space to share, but nothing happens after that. It just, all we have is a safe space where we can share, but nothing else, nothing happens. So there's no policies in place to impact change or to effect change. But that certainly is a good one. Deidre, again, this is situational. Sometimes the university may also silently not support him, which will make him even more difficult. Make it even more difficult. Let me see if I've missed any. I'm sorry. Okay, so we see biases in decision-making, plus there's hidden resistance from team members. Okay, we said that. Clear mandate supporting him via clear communication of his authority. That's a good one, Charlie. Thank you for that. And then Desiree says, show that they are on board and believe in the changes that he's trying to make. Absolutely. The college needs to show that their belief in him by echoing what he's trying to implement. Certainly. Yes. Oftentimes these individuals are hired and they're put in positions, but no support. So they're left alone, working in silos. It's been an interesting journey. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. They could also train his team about racism. Training is important. Also being transparent in terms of his credentials so persons will realize he is qualified for the job and not just a token position. Also providing support for higher authority. Clear, okay, perfect. I hope I haven't missed any. But these are all good. Thank you so much for your interaction. These are all good, Keachea. What are your thoughts?
Yes, definitely. And I have a follow-up to go off Julie's last comment, which is, how do you think the organization, the university, what challenges they may face when they try to facilitate Jamal, which is essentially trying to meet the 50-30 challenge, and potential benefits for the university in doing so? Do you understand? Or do
No,
I
if
need
we
to
can
repeat
just
it?
get that again.
Okay.
Mhm.
So my question is, what challenges do you all believe the university would have in trying to implement some of those ideas we came up with to help Jamal? And what would be their benefits in doing so, in actually meeting what we asked them, which essentially is the 50-30 challenge?
Let's get an audience member to share their thoughts, but that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat here. Or do I? 1 second. Please repeat. Oh, someone's asking you to repeat the question. Go ahead, my dear.
Okay,
It
so I'm
is
going to
kind
repeat the
of fully
question again,
loaded.
Julie. So given our request to the university in terms of, providing Jamal support, hearing him out, having someone at a higher level that he can go to that can help him navigate that space, what challenges do you believe the university would have in trying to meet our request? But what benefit would they gain by meeting these targets that we set for them?
You know what comes to mind? I'll speak just from that. What comes to mind for me is oftentimes, I'm Jamaican as well, proud Jamaican, and we have this thing where we say who feels it knows it, and it's easier for you when you've experienced what injustice looks like, racially or otherwise, right? Inequity feels like it's easy for you to champion a cause. It's easy for you to advocate for someone who you can relate to, right? The experiences. Individuals who are in these positions, if they can't relate to what you're experiencing, there's always going to be some level of pushback, some level of resistance, because I mean, we all have unconscious biases. And the loveliest of the people who are let's say non-Black people, some of them are really, really nice, but we all have unconscious bias. It doesn't mean that they have a bad heart or their intentions are impure, but if they can't see what we see, then it's difficult. And it goes back to the point of having someone who's in a higher position for mentorship, who's able to see from a diversity lens, basically, right? So I think the pushback would be, I think one of the resistance would be the fact that people aren't able to identify with what this gentleman is going through, right? So the resistance might be there. And we're very sensitive. We're still like white fragility is a thing. I think we're still very sensitive about discussing these crucial topics. I mean, the benefits are immense, right? So, but I think in terms of the negative aspects of it, it will really be the pushback, the unconscious biases, the white fragility, you know, becoming sensitive about these topics. People don't have time. People are very, you know, bottom line driven, right? And they may feel as they don't have the extra time to facilitate, let's say, a diversity council or, you know, these extra meetings or trainings. But the benefits of facilitating those things would be that it actually increases bottom line, because when people come to work and they're happy, they feel like they belong, it certainly makes an impact in how they produce.
For sure. I think we had some responses.
Yes, Desiree says the benefit that they will gain is more productivity because Jamal will feel valued. Exactly. Other employees will now see the potential or possibility for them to grow career-wise in the university. The university will be seen as one that supports diversity and inclusion, will make it a more favorable place to work. Let me see if I missed anything here. Because it's a checkbox to say they hired someone who is Black. To be honest, I really believe there should be no challenges. To be honest, if they really, okay, I think. Okay. If I'm missing any of these, please feel free to put your hand up, open your mic, and just ask the question. I feel as though I might be missing some. My screen is a bit wonky. But those are all great responses for sure. There's definitely power in diversity. There's brilliance in diversity. Isha?
Yes. I'm still here.
Okay, what's the next question?
So that ends the questions for that case.
Let's get Julie. Sorry about that, Keachea. Let's get Julie. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the hands that are being raised. Julie, if you can open your mic and just ask the questions, go ahead. Are we able to unmute her mic? Let me see if this works. Okay, just bear, if we can unmute Julie's mic, we'd love to hear.
Thanks, it's unmuted now.
Perfect, go ahead, Julie.
I was just thinking, in terms of, I know we're speaking about the 50-30 rule and stuff like that, and I guess we're not in a perfect world or anything like that, because the scenario that was given with that
Jamal, yeah.
With Jamal, and we talk about providing necessary support, etc., etc. Like, I mean, in a perfect world, like really and truly, all employees, and that is where I think sometimes the resentment comes in. Because let's say he's given extra support and stuff like that, where he can go in and express whatever he's experiencing. Now that kind of should be there for like every single person, regardless of your ethnicity, right? So then one ethnicity or a person with a disability or whatever should not be able to say, hey, this person is favored over this person because of race or because of, you know, stuff like that. And I think that is where the pushback comes in, because like sometimes even as like the 50-30 rule, I see why it's necessary, but then at the same time, I wish it wasn't necessary, you know, and everybody's just dealt with of merit kind of thing, as opposed to, okay, hey, we need to hire X amount of Blacks and X amount of whatever and X amount of, you know, and that in and of itself sometimes creates resentment by others, because it doesn't just, the whole system just does not seem equitable. And I mean, as a lawyer, you know that justice doesn't just need to be done; it needs to you know, it needs to appear to be done, right? So perception is a big thing, and that is kind of where I kind of have a little, you know, a little issue with all this 50-30. And I mean, it's the reality in which we live, right? And so this Jamal scenario that you put forth, a lot of this would have, like a lot of the challenges we wouldn't have necessarily if things were just equitable right across the board. So when support is given to Jamal, another white person can say, hey, it's because he's Black. Because if it was me, why is it I don't have that kind of support? It shouldn't be like that. Like, regardless of who is in the position, the support should be there, and then, but I don't know if we'll ever get to that place. That's just my thought on the matter.
Thank you for sharing.
And that's a
Yes.
good thought.
Mhm.
That's not a bad thought at all. That's definitely a good thought. Go ahead, Keachea.
Well, it just reminds me, right, of what we don't think about, that in order for one person to get all that they want, it means that someone else is going to lose something, right? And because we only have this, right? And if it was divided in one way and it wasn't equitable, in order to try and make it more equitable, we're going to be encroaching more on what someone else had before. And it's never easy for someone to lose what they have, right? But it has to be done to achieve the higher goal. So as you said, again, it's just finding those partners that are willing to go through the rough stages to get us where we need to be, right? There's some people who believe that you can never have equality, right? But that's because everyone wants everything. So once we accept that you can't have everything and not harm someone else, right? Because if you eat the entire chicken, the person next to you is not getting any, right? So you have to be willing to share the space, right? In order to have a better community and society.
Yeah, ultimately it's leveling the playing field, it's because people's hearts are people's hearts. It's difficult to change people's hearts, but the policies, the 50-30 challenge, these initiatives, it helps to level the playing field. And if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do. Right. But I hear your heart, Julie. I totally hear you because I'm right there with you, believe me.
So if no one else has anything to share right now, I would just, want to see if Moy wants to recap her major takeaways from our discussion. And then if you miss anything, I will add.
Yeah, one of the things that I do like, I like the fact that you've shared, even in the beginning, in terms of being a parent, having children who go through the school system, as we talked about before, that whether or not we've experienced on an individual level racism or discrimination, we know that it certainly does exist from an institutional and systemic level. And with that being said, we know it's there. We know that we will experience it indirectly or otherwise. I think when we're able to know that and come into that realization, it's easy for us to even acknowledge something like the 50-30 challenge, because I think you made it real when you say, listen, we need to be sitting on boards. We need to be a part of those meetings. We need to help to effect change within the school system so that we can point out these things. One of the things that I've learned in life is that in order for us, because we all have biases, but we don't know we have biases until we sit down with someone who is different from us. That's able to say, hey, because if we're sitting down with the same people that think like us, that act like us, that eat the same food as us, you know what I mean? It's difficult for our biases to show up, right? So, but when we, or to be, identified, I should say. So when we sit with people that look different from us, then it's in those times that we're able to see that there are biases that we need to address. So with that being said, diversity is key to ensuring that. So us sitting on boards, us participating in those meetings, sitting at those tables, it's ensuring that we are making our voices heard. We are sharing our experiences, and that's how we will affect change. That's the biggest that I've got. And this is, again, it's made it more real to me in terms of the 50-30 challenge, because I'm not sure if it was that clear for me before, but thank you for that. The workshop is definitely important, and I hope you all liked it too. I do see that some people have left, but certainly put in the chat.
And Desiree has her hand up.
Desiree, did you want to go ahead and share?
I did. I just wanted to maybe get some insight on how to, for instance, I do sit on a couple of boards, and I sit on one board with a union actually, and it is I'm a co-chair for DEI, and we had come up with some clear guidelines just to get us in positions like you're talking about. However, we received some pushback to say, well, oh, we don't know how we can go about, having a mandatory of 2 Black people in this department, or however it may look. How do you deal with hearing something like that coming from a union that is put in place to fight for what we need?
That's definitely a tricky one. So what I'm gathering is that the union doesn't, the union heads don't reflect diversity, and you're asking them to now do so, and they're saying no, correct?
In a way, they how do I put this? Their mandate is, yes, they're on board, they believe in diversity, but they feel, I think the mentality is that how do they justify saying that, okay, you can have, there should be a mandatory of 2 DEI members, whether, and why we came up with the 2 Black members is because we are the most racialized community, and it is hard for us to be in certain positions. So if you have a mandatory of 2 Black people in this department, then we we are meeting our mandate. And I feel where the pushback is coming from is they don't know how to address that because, as you said, I don't think they understand where we're coming from as Black people, because we are so racialized. So how do I package this for them to understand that it is needed? Because we will get picked over in a DEI situation where you can go, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can say that, oh yeah, we have 2 DEI in this department, and one person has a disability, and the other person is, we'll say, indigenous. That still
Okay,
leaves us
I
out
get,
of the equation.
yes. I guess one of the ways you could address that, if you had the numbers, right, was to speak to the numbers of Black individuals in the organization, right? And the fact that there's no representation for them. And as you said, point out that your voices are still not heard because, yes, they have met a particular mandate, but given the makeup of the union or the community that the union serves, they need to add a Black individual in there as well. That's one way if you had the numbers in favor for you. If not, then I would just continue asking for it and see if you find someone in that tier that supports what you're asking for. It's always good to find someone that can champion it for you or with you, who is at the top, if possible. I know that wasn't of much help, but I can't see another way around it, because that is a concern I have, that because the requirement is so broad, individuals do choose what they're comfortable with allowing over other things that should be addressed.
Mhm. Let's get, we do have a few more minutes to answer maybe a couple more questions. And I see your hand up. Maybe we can open your mic and ask the next question.
Yeah, I think sometimes we put slogans in and like 50-30 and 20-40 and 100 and 100 and 15-year thing for Black people. But we have to, I think there's a level of knowledge of education, we call it edification, that has to happen among Black people to understand that white supremacy and racism didn't start yesterday. It's like DNA. It's been in the to get justice, it's going to be painful. It's going to be messy. And even we as Black people, we are sometimes the most afraid of the mess. But there's no justice without mess. There will be no peace until justice is served. So it's going to be messy. But what I'm saying to folks here is, especially my people, first, we need to understand what this is about. We need to know what white supremacy, racism, patriarchy is, because they are hand in hand. It's years upon years, and we have, I just don't want Black people to be somewhere. I'm worried about what kind of minds you're bringing in as Black people. Because you could be Black, and if you have the same mind of a white person, then even though you're in a position, it might not even benefit me. So I always go a little bit deeper when you say who should be on there. If a woman is on there and she's patriarchal in her thought process, then she's just a symbol. If you're Black and you're following white supremacy behavior, your color is there, but the ideology is what I'm really talking about. And so this thing will be a little bit messy. It will be pushed back, and we have to push back. They push back, you push back. Because that's why you hear the critical race theory going across the US. You can't teach anything truth about Black history. But we have to stand firm, and whether we call it 50-30 or right now, justice denied cannot continue for those of us with the darker hue of melanin. We got to continue to push back for justice. And I think it just comes down to that. You will push back, it will be painful. And our people have gone through so much, whether in the Caribbean, North America, wherever we have lived. And if we want any type of justice, we got to stand up, and it will still be painful, even when we're trying to get some justice. So I appreciate the reasoning. And I just say for Black folks, this will be messy. Anything called justice will be messy. Reparations will be messy. It's just, but if we don't confront it, the future of our children will be the one to say, there was a group of Black folks in 2024. They didn't have the courage. They were afraid. And I think it's up to us to make sure the unborn children of Black people will get some justice by not having any fear. And that's one of the things when I've traveled, I know that they can do anything they want to do. They can punish and do all of that, but they have done that before. And I'm saying for us for today, and I work within a miseducation, I work in a school system. And when I stood up there 20 years ago and say white supremacy, my Black colleague says, what are you saying? And I'm like, but who has to say it? So today they look at me to say it, and I'm keeping quiet because I'm like, no, you have permission to say it. Because today I hear Black organization use white supremacy. When I used it, they were nervous. They were like, call me a troublemaker. So we need to continue to be troublemakers. That's all I have to say to you folks. Please be troublemaker, Moy. Thank
you. You know, you've raised so many points. One of the things that I will say, and I think this speaks to a point there by Deidre, you know, we've all, even Black people, we've all been influenced and impacted by colonialism. And with that being said, I do find that oftentimes we are perpetuating the very same thing that we're trying to fight. You know, I'm going to leave it there because I have so much to say where that is concerned. But thank you so much, Anam, for that point. And I will do my best to cause trouble, to keep causing trouble. Thank you.
Yes, and definitely made a lot of great points. And yes, it's important that we keep pushing back. That's the only way anything that we have been fighting for will get to where we need it to be. If we just take our eyes off for one moment, we'll be surprised how quickly it goes back to what before, what it was before we asked and received some type of response. And we can see that with the school, right? So we definitely need to push back. So I think that confirms my response as it relates to, if you can't find anyone at the top of the union, if you can't find the figures, then continue asking for what you need, despite the pushback that you receive.
Absolutely. We have some announcements at the end, and I just want you to finish up your last bit here. I thank you so much, Keachea, for your time today. It's been great. The discussion has been rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Moy. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that participated. I loved the engagement, and I am so grateful and happy for that, because I think whoever missed it, at least they will be able to get something from this when they watch the recap on YouTube. And, stay committed to encourage others about this initiative. And of course, add in that point from Anam that, as we push for the initiative, we should be cognizant of the individuals we put in those positions, that they're actually going to go there to help bring someone else forward or keep it in place, and that they're not just there with the wrong intentions, to the best of our ability. And, if you're not in an organization, if you're not in a company, because I don't know the makeup of our participants or who will be watching, but everyone from the students in middle school, high school, if you're watching with your parents, to the retiree, we all have something we can do towards this initiative by sharing the information with others, by participating in boards of different levels that don't have someone with our experience on it, that would add the diversity, because we live in communities and many don't even know what's going on at City Hall, right? So even at that level, if you can participate as well, participate in your towns, right? Everywhere there's different legislations being made, in the schools, if you're not in an organization or company, that you can do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Keachea, it's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you for sharing more about the 50-30 challenge.